Hi, I'm Daniela Mellon, an author and artist. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a fabric book. But more precisely, I'm going to show you how to make the structure for a fabric book. And then in subsequent videos, we'll embellish it with stitching and fabric collage and the like. So to start with your project, what you want to do is find the fabric you want. If you use batting, which I love to use as the base of my fabric book, it creates a really thick and chunky book. If you use cotton fabric like this flannel, this is the same number of pages, but as you can see, it's a much thinner book. So really, that's up to you, as well as the size of the book that you make, and that is up to you as well. The techniques I'm going to show involve creating your own templates just out of cardstock or cardboard. It's a very simple procedure, but it allows you to tailor the book to the size that you want. The first thing I do is I create my templates. Now to do this, I roughly picture a size book that I want to create. I don't always want to create the same size book, and sometimes I want a really small book or a larger book. So I create these templates out of cardstock. And the first template I create is just a simple rectangle, and this is the size of my page if I was to unfold it. Now each page has two sides to it because I like to stitch on the page and I don't want the backing to show. So I'll stitch on one page, create the backing, stitch on the other, create the backing, and then adhere them together. So it's kind of a lengthy process to create this book, but it's definitely worth it. I like that I can make as few or as many pages as I want in that book. So I'll create that template, and once I have that page template done, this one is 5 by 8, and when I fold my page is 5 by 4, and this one is 4 by 6. And so when I fold my page is 3 by 4. And so these are really interesting sizes, and these are the two that I use most often. But like I said, you can make any size template. After I have my pages template done, I'll create a spine template. And the spine can be as wide as you want, but just remember the height has to match the page size. So here I have my templates for the spine as well as the pages. As you can see, they match. And the next stage is to cut out the structure fabric. And that's either the cotton batting or the cotton fabric. And as I mentioned earlier, if I use the thick batting, I get thicker pages. And then they're even thicker when I add on my stitching and my fabric collage. After I have my pages cut out and my spine cut out, I'll usually cut out a cover too, even though I don't have to do it at this stage. And to make that cover, I use the same size template I did for the pages, but I just make it longer. So if I'm using a 5 by 8 template, I'll make my cover maybe 5.5 or 6 inches by 12 or 14 inches, and then I'll trim this down later. But I like to have all my pieces cut out so that I have my skeleton ready to go. The next stage is I take all those pages that I've cut out with my fabric and I'll fold them in half. And I fold them in half in groups of 2. At this stage, it doesn't matter if you have right side fabric facing each other or not, because it's not going to show. So I make my pages folded in half, and essentially what I'm making is a signature of 2 pages. It's not technically a book signature, but it's the same procedure. So I have all my pages folded in half and stacked up. I like to fold my cover in half and just set that aside, and the same thing with the spine. I set that aside as well. So now that I have my pages folded in half, it's time to sew them. I sew them right up the fold, and I'll either take it to my machine and stitch a simple stitch right up the center, like a straight stitch, stopping at the top and bottom just to reinforce that, or I'll just hand stitch it. And I just do a running stitch. You can do a back stitch, a running stitch. You can make the stitch large or small. It's up to you. What you want to do is just adhere those 2 pieces together. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be done. Then, after I have all my pages stitched, I'll put them together, just trying to make them nice and neat in a stack. And then I'll take the fabric spine that I cut out. So what I'd like to do is take that bunch of folded pages together, and this can vary from the 8 that I have here, or as many or as few as you want. And then I take it and I put it kind of in the center of the spine. I'll trace little lines down the center, and this is just my guide, just so I know if I'm going off track. Again, this is all very forgiving. I'll take one of the signatures and I will open it up, but I will fold it right in half again on the first spot of the spine, near one of those lines that I traced. I usually like to do this on the far side on the right, but it doesn't really matter if you want to start at the left, or even if you want to start in the center. After I have that abutted up against my fabric for the spine, I can either pin it in place or clip it, or just hold it down with my fingers. And then I'll make another stitch through all the pages into the spine. And this anchors that page on the spine. I'll continue to do this with the remaining pages so that now I'm starting to get the beginning of my book. After I have all my pages done, and I'll slowly stitch each of them and knot each thread using a new thread for each stitched page attached to the spine. And that gives it a nice reinforcement, because in the event that my thread would break, it would only be one signature that was missing. I wouldn't lose all my pages. After I have all my pages adhered, I'll take a look at my folded spine attached to my pages. And as you can see, there's a little bit of overhang, both on the front and the back. And we're going to use this to anchor it to the cover. So now I'll take my cover and unfold it. I'll put my anchored pages on the spine in the center of the cover, and then before I do any stitching, I fold the cover over the book. And if I put my spine in the center of that when I fold it over, it's a little off just because of the amount of pages and the thickness. So I play around with it. I might move my pages and spine an inch or two off center of my cover. From there, once I have it set up and I'm happy with the way it looks, and there will be overhang, I'll stitch that little flap that we have left over on the spine to the cover. And again, all of this stitching will be covered in subsequent chapters when I show different techniques that I use to do that. So now you have a stitched book. I stitched with the front spine and the back spine, attaching it to the cover. And there is the structure of our book. In next week's video, we'll go over some techniques to adhere fabric to the pages to get a basis before we do any slow stitching or add pockets or any embellishments of that sort. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please give my video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for joining me.